Welcome to my Season 13 team review. My camera isn't working, it seems like. Yeah, when I turn it on, it's like, I don't know, it's just white, like this. So instead I put a picture of me. Maybe I'll just like, no, you know what, maybe, because, okay, I recorded this before, oops. So I recorded this before, and it was good, it was like okay, but the music was like way too loud, and my camera just like kept turning on and off randomly, and it would like sometimes be white and sometimes it'd be like pink, and I looked it up on the internet and it said that I have to like unscrew it and like loosen up some wires in there, and I just haven't really got around to doing that. So, and I'm not really looking to figure that out today. So here's a picture of me at like a public library, I guess. I don't know. I was like at one of my friend of a friend's band's concerts, and outside there was like this public library. So there's me pointing at the books. Love books. Anyways, so, oh dang, looks like I'm ill prepared, but I wanted to have one box of my rejects also because there were 3 Pokemon that I dropped this season, and 2 of them were part of my original drafts, and 1 of them was not part of my original drafts. And it's these 3 and these. So basically what I'm gonna do is I try to do something different every season, and this season I think I'm just going to like talk about how my team works and really not give a hard rating to my individual ones. I also think that like giving a hard rating to a lot of these, or giving like a hard like 1 out of 10 rating or whatever, or like tier listing some of these is kind of difficult or pointless, because obviously, well, we'll get to it later, but some my mons are like, these are really good, they're all really good, and a lot of them were under tiered, probably questionably tiered even, and then I think Hydreigon might have been the best mod in the pool, period. So maybe, who knows, really. We'll talk about it. But first, we have the mons I started with. My original plan was just to stat check everyone with Hydreigon and Sandy Shocks. So I picked 2 other BST mons, which were Cloyster and Ursaring. And, Cloyster was like... So I ended up dropping him, but the reason I ended up dropping him was because, he sucked, and he didn't have Rapid Spin like I thought, and I didn't really need the hazards because I already had Muck, and I already had Sandy Shocks, so it was kind of redundant to have double spikes. And I was like going through the teams, and I'd look and see if like Shelf Smash Cloyster could actually like win a game from like a reasonable point, and it seemed like every team had like 1 to 2 checks, or like it just wasn't optimal for Cloyster to sweep. It would be like more optimal for something else, or it would just be like easier, and didn't feel worth 50 points, and it wasn't like being kind of like the glue I wanted, so I got rid of it. Yeah, I think maybe I could have tried harder with Cloyster, but unfortunately I did not. And like, I think there's potential with the special attack stat and like abusing Terra Blast. Like, after I dropped it, Logical was telling me about it, and he's like, yeah, you could just like do some jank shit like this maybe, and then do like special attack, and then you just do like Terra Blast, and then you Terra to just whatever your check is in that matchup, and then you just hit it with a Terra Blast and hopefully kill it. So I think that might be worth considering if it could be like a mixed kind of sweeper, because Smash does kind of enable that, and Skill Link is like powerful. And I think at 40 points it might be worth reconsidering this, maybe. Yeah, but definitely the second most disappointing one I feel, or actually no, the most disappointing one I used this season. Ursaring was fine. I think this one's really good at tier 4, and it's still tier 4. He's good. He's a good guy. You put EV light on him. He's really bulky. You do like rest, body slam, sleep talk, +1 move, or you if they have no ghost types, you do the funny like bulk up rest, body slam. Because when you're sleeping, you have guts on you, so you're like you get an attack boost and you already have really high attack. So body slam hits really hard, but that's the literal only thing this thing can do. Really has the potential of doing. Yawn is in taunt, or it's like only real utility moves, and it's kind of hard to use them on a mon with 55 base speed. So yeah, just put EV light and try to hit with this, and like, I think it's definitely worth it. This is a good guy. He's good. Next we have Iron Leaves, who I was thoroughly disappointed with. I thought this was going to be the best mon in the pool in the beginning, and it wasn't. And I also didn't play with terrain, so that could have been it, but it just like was so one-dimensional. It does the same thing every game, right? It's either banded or it clicks SD. And excuse me, sorry, it's 2 in the morning. I'm a little tired. It clicks like SD. There's like very little room for. I mean, it has Calm Mind, but 70 special attack is like somewhat fake, and it worked for one game with Sick Boy, but I don't know. Clicking Psyblade off terrain is really fucking. It doesn't feel good. It really feels bad. Yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of this guy. He's too one-dimensional, and he wasn't doing his job of just like sweeping enough. But I mean, he's definitely good. I would not sleep on him, but you probably need to build more than what my team wasn't just like built for. My team was just my team was different. So now I'll get to the mons I finished with, and now we have Scyther. So I got Scyther instead of Ursaring. So basically the timeline was I dropped Cloister and I dropped Ursaring and I took Iron Leaves. And after I took Iron Leaves, or after I dropped that, I dropped Iron Leaves and I took Slowbro because someone had dropped Slowbro and Scyther. And I had the choice between Ursaring and Scyther, but I wanted something a little bit faster since I lost Iron Leaves, so I just got Scyther. It's like also EV Light Swords Dance, basically. One thing, it also has defog, which is nice, and it also resists bug and fighting very well. And that's good with Hydreigon. And this guy was really good. He won me games. He swept. He did his job. I tarred him twice or 3 times even, I think, this season. And I got him towards the end. I think if I'm all season, he would have popped off more, but just Swords Dance, just Sweeper with Eviolite or whatever item. I used Clear Amulet once. I think he used Boots once. A couple times I just like led this thing and SD'd up, started hitting. It's pretty nice. At tier 4, it's really strong. It's a lot stronger than the other tier 4s, in my opinion. So is Ursaring. I thought there was a big gap in the tier 4s, and Scyther was definitely on the higher end. Yeah. Defog was also kind of cool. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think I also clicked U-turn like once. Next we have Slowbro in tier 2, and I think this guy was appropriately tiered. Basically, if you did not know, the reason he is tiered lower than he was in Gen 8 is because he lost Teleport. And losing Teleport means that he can't slow pivot away. So slow pivoting was like basically cheesing a double every time, and he could take like any physical hit. So it didn't really matter. Even like a lot of super effective, like Weavel's knockoff, for example, he could live that and just teleport out of it, and then you'd like regen, and it wouldn't be that much damage at the end of the day. It'd be like only 25 to 30 damage. If you had Rocky Helmet too, then Weavel's getting chipped a lot. Ran Colberberry back in the day, but basically he's the same in my eyes. This guy's the same Pokemon if you hit all your doubles, which is not consistent obviously because doubling is like. Well, I mean, like, you have to be in your opponent's head. You're gonna guess wrong sometimes, right? You can make as many educated guesses as you'd like, and you can get a lot right. I like to think I'm pretty okay at doubling, and I still get a lot wrong. But I think this was still value if you're like your team kind of has to be built for it too, and like Slowbro kind of worked really perfectly for me. I think, especially in pairing with Hydreigon, resisting fighting. Yeah. It just makes... It also, Hydreigon resists Ghost, also, I think, and Dark, which is the Slowbro weaknesses. They're both weak to Bug, but, I mean, I have other checks for that. We get it later. I think part of why Slowbro did so well on my team is that my whole team is just like its effective BST is really high and the type chart as well. So I could safely make a lot of doubles, especially after taking early leads by making like plays like leading Scyther and leading Hydreigon. So I can make a lot of safe doubles, and when you make a lot of doubles and you make a lot of good doubles, like successful doubles, the spawn is just as good as it was in Gen 8. So yeah, just double a lot, or like basically just get good is the. I also swept with this guy once. He stored powered in playoffs, which felt really good. I got pretty lucky that game, but it still felt good. Would recommend Slowbro if you need the niche, but it's not like over centralizing or overpowered in my opinion. Next we got Hariyama, which was a tier 3, so tier below Slowbro, but I picked it. It was the first mon I picked in phase 2, I think. That still remains on the team, so I put it up here. Hariyama is really good. Its base stat is a little low, but its effective base stat is very nice, especially when you, see, I pre-recorded this, or I recorded the other one, so I was messing with the EVs already. It has like really high base HP, so basically what you could do is you could just put into whatever defense stat you want, and HP, and you've got like a pretty bulky def wall here, or you got like a pretty bulky Spidef, if you were to do Spidef, or you could even do this, which I did like once, and I did something like this, I believe. I did Sheer Force Assault this, so, and I had like 4 Sheer Force moves, so I was like I had 3 in close combat maybe, and so like I was like hitting, and it was like okay, but I'd recommend just doing attack, and like oftentimes the HP is like kind of overkill, and if you don't have a Wish Passer, it's kind of redundant. Even if you do have a Wish Passer, this guy's got more HP than your Wish Passer most likely. I don't know. Don't put points in the HP stat as much as you can. I'd much rather put in this, or even this if you're feeling spicy, I guess. Yeah. Low special attack is really nice too for effective base stat. Yeah, he gets really nice move pool. 3 abilities are really good. I use Thick Fat the most, I believe. I use Guts the second most, and I only use Sheer Force once. Guts in Thick Fat I would rate as really strong, and Sheer Force I would rate as a niche with Assault Vest. I'd say Thick Fat is usually better with Assault Vest, but there's like probably some matchups where Sheer Force is better. That's what happened to me basically. There was no like fire or ice types, so I didn't really need Thick Fat. So I just ran Sheer Force. But really good mon. Would I tier it up? I don't think so. Would I say it's one of the better tier 3s? Yes, I'd say it's like much better than a lot of the tier 3s in the pool. I guess I don't have it in front of me. Seasons Pass isn't updated yet, so I'm not. Maybe if I just type in, it'll come up. There. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I thought Hariyama was a lot better than shit like Ditto and Chansey and like Braviary and Arbolivia, Honchkrow. Like I don't know. I think there's a large gap in a lot of the tiers between the top and the bottom of the quality of Pokemon, and Hariyama sat at the very top. I think all these mons sat at the very top, honestly, if not over the top. And one of the first mon that I have that was probably over the top, I think, Scyther might have been borderline, is Muck. Muck was my tier 5. I got him in phase 1, and I picked him because I needed a poison type, and poison types work well with Hydreigon, because Hydreigon is immune to ground type moves and also immune to psychic type moves, which are poison's only weakness. And poison is resistant to fairy and fighting, which are and bug, which are all of 3 of Hydreigon's weaknesses, not all of them. It's also got pretty decent stats. It's got decent stat distribution, not perfect, but okay, and it's got a decent move. I'd say like a solid to above average move pool with one usable ability and one extremely niche ability and one unusable ability. But as a tier 5, that's a banger in my opinion, and I think this guy did a lot of work, and he came to most of my games. In fact, I had very little to complain about. I mean, I even as a tier 4, I would have been happy with how much mileage I got out of this guy. A lot of games, I was using Toxic or Toxic Spikes on him, but other games I would just use Assault Vest because he has naturally a lot of Spadef. So you just do like something like this and put Assault Vest, and he's very Spadefy. I'd even do something like this, and as opposed to, which is why Poison Touch is pretty nice on Muck, in combination with something like Poison Jab, which is basically doubling your chance of poisoning at 30%, 30%. Maybe not doubling, I don't really know how the math works exactly. But as opposed to Hariyama, you can actually do stuff like this and get away with it, I think, instead of putting stuff in attack, even though he has less attack than Hariyama, because obviously they're kind of like, they're different Pokemon, but I think this guy gets away with walling more and still applying pressure as a wall, a low tier wall, because of the poison, the threat of poison and the threat of poison spikes. Also, it just has like pretty good coverage, so it hits all the 4 times, like all the important 4 times, with like special coverage moves, which is kind of awkward because you have to run minus speed instead of this, because the special attack stats are already like pitiful. So you can't minus it in most cases. And yeah, but I would rate Muck really highly. It's really easy to use. It fits well, very plug and play on any team that needs a poison type, and I think Poison's really strong. It deletes Toxic Spikes, and now that Toxic has low distribution, this will see Muck will save you from a lot of setup sweepers, or at least force them to run Substitute, which is something. Taunt and Curse are also funny on this guy. I think like the most common moves I use were Gunk Shot, Poison Jab, and Toxic Spikes, and then just coverage. Shadow Sneak is also cool. And next for mons that I think are under-tiered and still under-tiered, we have Arcanine. So Arcanine has a really good defensive typing. It has one really, really good ability, S-tier ability, Intimidate, and one pretty usable ability, and one like whatever ability. You could probably do something with Justified, but it wasn't necessary on my team. Yeah, 555 BST, which isn't as high as the effective BST unless you're running a mixed set, which I almost never did. I don't think I ever ran a mixed set. But I think the important part about the 555 BST is that it gives you the threat of both physical and special attacks, which was really useful for me. And I have a clip I can show from my series versus Panda, and I can talk about it a little in a brief moment. But I want to talk about briefly why Arcanine was like such a strong pick, and why its tiering was so strange at tier 3 to me, and why like how it being tiered at tier 3 made my team so much stronger. Like I have Matui's team pulled up here, and that's just because like he was the first matchup I played in playoffs, I guess. But yeah, Tauros Poly Combat, which is perfect for this example because this is another Intimidator in tier 3, which is really which I also think is actually under tiered, but is an Intimidator. But I don't think this thing, like if you compare it, I don't think this thing, like as a wall, this thing is not comparable to Arcanine. Simply because you have to use Rest to heal on Tauros, and this guy retained access to Morning Sun, which is just so fucking broken. And I don't know, like it's not like broken per se, but it's just so strong. And that's tier 3. It just felt so broken to be able to intimidate and run like spreads like this and still apply pressure with Flare Blitz and my decent attack stat, and a move that hits as hard as Flare Blitz, and like just fire. Like Flare Blitz is so good. Stab Flare Blitz is so good, especially when you have access to healing. Intimidate makes you a really safe switch in, and Will-O-Wisp was so good this season. Most games I did Spadef or Def, but there was 2 games where I ran something like along this line with Choice Band, and I had like Extreme Speed and Flare Blitz and Play Rough and Flame Charge, I believe, which was cool. And this thing can apply a lot of offensive pressure. It gets a really good attacking move pool with Close Combat, Extreme Speed, and Flare Blitz. It hits a lot of things. Play Rough is really cool too for hitting Dragon types, and it gets Wild Charge as well for hitting Water types. Very cool mon. I'd often run Terra Grass, Terra Water. Oh, I forgot to talk about the Terra types. I guess I'll go back and talk about Terra types after I finish talking about Arcanine. But I was usually running Water or Grass on this most games. But this was probably the most value mon on my team, even next to Sandy Shocks and Hydreigon. I think this guy was so broken. And you know, I'd even say he's better than the Tauroses in tier 2. Which are also comparable. Maybe the Water Tauros is too, like its typing is just different, so it's just not as comparable. But when you go head to head with the Water Tauros, it's like or sorry, the Fire Tauros, it really does just feel like the self-healing is worth its weight in gold, even worth more than the 10 extra speed and the access to like Earthquake and stab close combat and things like that. But yeah, no, Arcanine really, 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 really good. Would recommend. Really easy to use. You just throw it in there. It presses Will-O-Wisp, it presses Morning Sun, and it just trades so effectively. And yeah, its special set is also quite deadly. So basically, I want to talk about my championship series with Panda, but first, to talk about that, we have to start with my first series of the season, which was also versus Panda, in which he also has an Arcanine, and we had two bits of interactions that kind of expired me. We ended up both bringing physical Arcanine with Intimidate, and we had this moment where we just kind of had our Arcanines looking at each other, and then like I Will-O-Wisp predicting like a hard switch, or I predicted a switch. I think I don't know. I was Will-O-Wisping his Iron Hands, I believe, or a Mimikyu or something like that. And so he's switching the Arcanine. And we have this awkward exchange where I just like sit in and flare and he roars and then brings in my Muck. And then we just both go about our day. So I was like, that's weird at the time. Didn't think much about it. And then in game 2, I believe I lost game 1. In game 2, kind of a similar thing happened where I brought it in on Mimikyu and Arcanine again came in on the Will-O-Wisp. And then Sire came in, which is important to note. Because I realized, one, Arcanine inherently can't get too much mileage in this matchup. Because, like, I think Arcanine's better as a physical attacker most of the time than a special attacker just because he gets more moves. And it does have a higher stat, but it's mostly about the moves. But I realized, like, okay, this guy can't get much mileage anyways, so I might as well, like, take what I can from the set, which was Morning Sun and Will-O-Wisp, and try to do something funny. And I realized if he's willing to bring Quagsire in on Arcanine, there is only one thing I could possibly do to send Quagsire, and so Decidueye comes in always on Sandy Shocks because it resists Dual Stab and it hits it for super effective. So I bring in Arcanine, pretty expected. He goes for U-turn, which is standard, and he safely brings in the Quagsire. No, of course, the physical set on Arcanine, which I brought in our last series, and which I have brought to every series this season, nearly, if not all. It brings, so he thinks there's no way I can kill it, basically, if I'm physical from this point, even though he's 50%. But unfortunately for him, I am not physical. I'm actually power Solar Beam, and I could just send that straight to his dome, and it dies. And it dies from full health anyways. So, I wasn't in any danger of... My spread ensured that he died from full health anyways, even if he is max Def Quag, which he was. But that, like, obviously isn't possible for the Tauroses, right? If I had Tauros there, like, they just get walled by the Quag. And even if this is the only game I brought out the special set all season, it was, like, right? It won me a game in finals. That's worth it, I feel like. Yeah, Arcanine's just fucking cracked. So versatile. Such a good wall. Great typing. Great Terra user. Love Arcanine. Okay, yeah, and I'll talk about the other Terras. I only use Terra Flying on this guy pretty much, and I don't think I ever ended up using it in any of my games. I don't see any other reason to use a Terra unless you're doing some setup cheese or you need a different defensive typing that's not flying. But flying, I was just trying to avoid the ground weakness to get more spikes up. Or maybe I used Dark one week, I don't remember. It was basically never clicked. I used a bunch of different ones on this guy. I think Steel was the most common though, mostly for boosted Bullet Punch and for resistances to Fairy and Flying. I think I used Ground one for Stab Earthquake or Stab Headlong. That's about it. For this guy, you almost always want to Terra into a water weakness resist, and what I mean by that, if that doesn't make sense, what I mean by that is like grass for electric and grass, etc. You know, so I was basically Terra get it into grass or dragon or pure water to get rid of the psychic typing, because pure water is a pretty good defensive typing, and sometimes it was just the most optimal. I'd rarely ever click it though. I think you'd only click it if you were setting up on it really, or if you like need like a clutch foul play or a slack off or something. I'm not sure to take a hit. Defensive Terra is definitely pretty good, but I don't think it ever came up. And for this one, you just use whatever you need to hit with. So, like in finals against Panda, I used ground because I needed to hit the Arc-9. And I needed to hit something else. I forgot what though. And Iron Hands. And against Fleet, I use fighting for stab close combat. And against someone else, I use stab flying, or I use flying just to make aerial ace stronger. But Terra's really good on this guy because he's just a really good sweeper with Sword Stance and really unexpected. So Terra, big fan of Terra. But moving on from that, we've got Decidueye. I picked Decidueye at tier 4 because I needed Defogger and I also needed a Ghost type. And this guy had Roost. He just seemed like insane roll compression, and also he has both physical and special sets, so same shit with Arcanine. Pretty good stat distribution, high BST because it's a starter. Both abilities are fairly useless. Long Reach did come into play a couple of times. Overgrown never came into play. I'd say Long Reach came into play like twice to avoid like Rocky Helmets and like a static, I think, on a U-turn or a Flame Body or something like that. But yeah, basically what you would run, this guy could run so many different sets, but primary usage was Defog with like Boots. Terra Water was pretty much all I used, and I used Terra Ghost offensively. This guy's offensive capabilities came up surprisingly amount of times this season, but I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't count on that when you're picking it. I'd say use it when it's effective. It gets Shadow Sneak, Spirit Shackle's pretty cool, it gets Shadow Ball, it gets Plot and Sword Dance. Sucker is cool, Knockoff is cool, but like, and access to Roost obviously makes setting up nice, but like, I would just like pick it as a defensive tool and for fun it, like, and keep it in mind that it can also be pretty offensive. It did end up getting a lot of KOs this season, so I'm a huge fan of Decidueye. It did get tiered up this season. I'm not sure if I would pick it at tier 3 at all, but like as I said, I think Decidueye was another example of something under tiered on my team, and I guess people agreed with me because it's now in tier 3. So yeah, definitely if you are looking to pick it in tier 3, I wouldn't like be like, ew, gross. It's like he said, it's not worth it. Like I think it's fine. Like if you need the roll compression, like go for it. He definitely pulled his weight for me. Next we have Sandy Shocks with tier 2. This one was just like, at draft, this one was being suspect tested in UU, so I was like, okay, fuck it, like, I'll just pick this shit. Basically, I picked Hydreigon because I thought it was the best mod in the pool left, and then I thought Sandy Shocks was the second best mod in the pool left that I could pick, so I just picked Sandy Shocks. Let's do a quick camera check. Nope, sad. Okay, so the reason Sandy Shocks is so strong is it has access to booster energy, and its dual stab is really strong. It has access to Earth Power Thunderbolt, and so yeah, it's access to booster energy, which means it boosts its speed or special attack. In Sandy Shock's case, if it wants to, special attack only by 1.3, speed by 1.5, and it also gets access to both hazards and Volt Switch. It gets like Flash Cannon and Power Gem for coverage. It gets Thunder Wave for utility on top of the hazards. It also gets the physical moves if you're into that, but that never came up for me. It almost came up once. It gets screens too. I never used that. And this guy's just like really strong. He's not like oppressive in OU. He's just used as like a lead to get up hazards, and then like Volt Switch out of there, and then maybe like a revenge kill later. He's not like oppressive, but he's also maybe the best tier 2, definitely up there. He did so much work for me this season, he just pumps damage. I'd either use a choice set, booster energy with Terra Electric or Terra Ground. I didn't really use defensive Terra very much. I just wanted to juice more when I would Terra this guy, and I actually did end up Terraing this guy a fair amount of times to get more juice out of his Earth Powers and Thunderbolts, and it was worth it. So I just did same type Terras with this guy, and yeah, you can see here I ran like Soft Sand too. I just thought like in this game, in my game versus Panda, I didn't run Electric. I actually ran Ground, I believe. Like this was the set I ran versus Panda with like Thunder Wave and Spikes, I believe, or my other 2 moves. And like yeah, like just use this to juice your Earth Power a little bit more. Rarely use Life Orb because you kind of want this guy to switch in a couple of times because he's fairly bulky. He has high BST because he's a Paradox mon. you switch him in, you volt switch him out for positioning, or you take a kill on a revenge kill because he's fast and he hits hard. You do have to do this jank. If you want to use booster energy, you have to use this janky spread to get his speed up because his special attack needs to be lower than his speed, and this is his max speed, and if you 252, you will not be, I just like inhaled something, I'm not sure what, it was like a bug. Sorry about that. Anyways. Yeah, you need to hit 330 here because 331 is your max speed, and then you get a little extra bulk out of it, which is pretty nice. Really, really good mon. I think I used leftovers on it once, actually. Same type Terra. Pretty straightforward, though. Not too much flexibility when it comes to it. You pretty much know what you're getting. I think I didn't use Discharge ever. You could probably use Discharge. Discharge is definitely real. Oh, I will say, you will have also, if you pick this guy, you will have problems with air balloon Jolteons because you can't hit them if you only bring your dual stab. So be wary of air balloon Jolteons. It came up twice for me this season. Last but not least, we have Hydreigon. What can I say? If you watch playoffs, you know this guy's a fucking monster. The reason he's a monster is he's Hydreigon. If you're familiar with Pokemon, you know that 125 stab Draco Meteor is extremely strong. He's the pseudo legendary from Gen 5, so he's been seeing. He got rarely nerfed by the fairy typing because he's obviously 4 times weak to fairy. Doesn't have the best profile of defensive typings, but that's okay because he has levitate, and when you have levitate, you also have terrestrialize. And when you have terrestrialize, you do the funny thing where you, and levitate in the same mon, you do the funny thing where you Terra into a fire, poison, or steel type, and you lose your ground weakness, and you become really, really strong defensively, because all those types are really good defensively when they lose their ground weakness. I used poison the most this season, but steel and fire both came up the most. You could also do same type Terra to, you use same type Terra to, boost your Dracos and your Dark Pulses, totally valid. It never came up for me though, just not the nature of my team. I didn't need the juice when it came to Hydreigon. My most common select was Nasty Plot Substitute, and it 6-0'd twice. I led Substitute Nasty Plot Hydreigon twice, and it 6-0'd from lead twice. So I led it more than twice, but it killed the entire game twice. So yeah, you could also run it. I was under the impression this guy was actually kind of a scarfer, but when I picked him, but I found out quickly that he is most optimal using Terra, and for some reason they just gave him, he lost Roost, which kind of sucks, but they gave him Stealth Rock, which is kind of cool. Yeah, and I think the other set that's worth noticing, it gets Taunt and Tailwind, which is noticeable. It gets U-Turn. I never used Thunder Wave. I didn't really, I used Stealth Rocks like once, which was cool. But basically, I think I used the physics. It gets Dragon Dance as well, and it has 105 attack, and it gets access to stuff like Outrage and Earthquake. So its attacking set isn't pretty good, and it gets just really good base stats across the board. Like, every single one of these stats is, like, really usable. It's like, for example, like any of these stats on, like, a tier 4 or a tier 5, or even, like, a tier 3, for example, would be, like, really good, right? So, like, at bare minimum, like all of these stats by themselves just, like, beat out the lower tier mons, and especially when you just are nasty plotted and you're faster than them, and you're teared up so you can't die ever. He just destroys lower tiers. He doesn't really care about the other higher tiers. Save the other dragon types that are faster than him, he doesn't really like, because they get good coverage. They can actually hit everything pretty much, even through Levitate Terra. If your opponent preps properly for it, I get water. My throat was getting a little dry there. Hydreigon was probably the best mod in the pool, in my opinion. And it showed, like, you could just do crazy mind game kind of stuff with it. And I want to talk about my series with Fleet a little bit. Showing, like, how my Hydreigon mind games, like, worked in this series and, like, how effective it was beyond just, like, 6-0ing from lead with the subset. So, like, I brought 3 different sets versus fleet on my Hydreigon, and that's just the flexibility. And I prepared 2 of them, and then 1 of them I made on the spot. But basically, this was just like a physical set. All this guy did this game was Earthquake this Sylveon I was struggling with, and it died, and I lost this game. But it was helpful, and basically, all you need to know from this is that Fleet Fox knows that Hydreigon is physical, so she takes that into account in the next game. Allegedly, maybe, I don't know actually if she does or not, and it comes up where Hydreigon comes in here. Also, fun cameo of Arcanine using Morning Sun 7 times in a game, and also, and just like winning, I don't know, stupid one. Anyways, so he thinks I'm physical, and if I'm physical, I can't hit Azumarill. I have no moves to hit Azumarill for super effective, which means even though it's burned, it's just gonna play rough me and die. And I Earth Powered it. So I think I switch out here. I should switch out here. Oh no, what? Oh, maybe I just went for Flitch. I guess she was trying to double. It was the only way she would win. Is if she doubled and caught me off guard. Low odds of her from winning at this point anyways. But basically, I had run Roselli Berry Belch this game with Nasty Plot in coverage. Dark Pulse Earth Power, I believe. And so the reason I did this wasn't to tank a Azumarill player off because I would die, or even Sylveon Hyper Voice because I'd still sometimes die to that, depending on like if Sylveon was boosted or not. But it was actually for Dazzling Gleam and this stupid player off from Typhlosion because I don't have the replay up, but she actually brought physical Typhlosion and it fucking boomed my Hydreigon last time with play rough. And it was full physical last time, and I didn't think she was going to bring full physical again because it was kind of like mid compared. Like Eruption's better, right? Like Eruption is the best set for Typhlosion, so you want to use Eruption. But like Mixed is a cool idea, and it was something I didn't really think about, and I think it was really effective here. But like just in case, like I say that, but like I thought about it when in prep, which I think was a cool decision I made. And it paid off here because I took the play rough. It ate it with the Roselli Berry, which it otherwise might have not been able to. Earth Power to Slay, and not that it mattered. Like I had obviously won this game anyways. There was no way out. Sandy Shocks was full health, and this was burned, right? So like I would just bring this in eventually and win with Sandy Shocks anyways. But she sees the Belch, and so now she knows I switched to special because I thought the physical wasn't as effective when I lost, and I won with special. But what I actually do is I go back to physical, because I realized I didn't need the special set that game. The special set didn't actually do anything. I'd already won the game anyway, so I went back to the physical, which was originally a clearing amulet plan, and it came up big. So here I take a knockoff, and my Slowbro gets kind of weak. So she brings in Miss Magius because this happens in our matchup. She brings in Miss Magius on Slowbro, and I kind of knew this going in, but part of the reason I bring Slowbro is because I know she'll bring in Miss Magius if I bring Slowbro, is she'll click Shadow Ball. And Miss Magius does get Gleam, so I do have to be careful doubling here, but I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty ahead. I'm 1 mon ahead, and I think I was pretty confident at this point to even slack off instead of it. So yeah, instead of like straight doubling, because I kind of suspected Miss Magius, so I slacked off, and I doubled expecting a Shadow Ball, because Shadow Ball is like pretty safe versus my team. Right? Hydreigon is the only resist, and since I'm ahead, she can't. I mean, I guess you could argue that she'd be more likely to make a desperation play in this scenario because I'm slightly ahead. But I thought she was just gonna Shadow Ball. My read on the situation that she was just gonna Shadow Ball, and she did Shadow Ball. And then so now that she's Shadow Ball and seen it, she's like, oh shit, he might be Scarf, or she remembers the Roselli Berry, or maybe she's predicting Scarf, so she knows that I will Dark Pulse to the face, even though Miss Magius is faster, she will die to Dark Pulse. But that's actually not what happens, and what I have up my sleeve the whole time, which Azumarill's a very safe switch in, as long as she doesn't pop Roselli Berry, right? Azumarill hard walls Hydreigon, no Roselli, pre-Roselli Berry. But what I actually do is I brought Terra Blast, Earthquake, Dragon Dance, one other coverage move, Crunch, I think, yeah, Crunch. And I Dragon Dance up. This Oko's the Azumarill with pretty much all calcs with Terra Blast. So I brought this, and I've Terra'd. It made me safe from the Dazzling Gleam by Terraing as well. And so the cool thing also about her not knowing that I am physical is that she brings in the Tauros, which should normally check it with Intimidate, but first of all, I'm Clear Amulet, and second of all, she's Spadef, because I believe, I mean, like, look, I have Hydreigon Sandy Shocks, like, you want to bring more Spadef Mons than, Death Mons versus me. And so, yeah, this shit just does, at +1, the 105 attack Clear Amulet Hydreigon does 64 to the Tauros, absolutely blowing this game wide open. And, yeah, like, you can use Hydreigon like this, mind games throughout the series. In this game, I think this is the point where I, like, won the game, in my opinion. I think, it was very hard for Fleet to come back from this point. And yeah, I think Hydreigon, it's just insanely strong. This example was a bit more like nuanced, but I hope it helped see like the power of it. I think this series also had like a lot of moments where my team really shined. I think Hydreigon later comes back in and takes a kill on Mismagius, and I like abused the whole Slowbro Mismagius interaction again, and this time I'm like more safe when I do it. Or I go for the hard double, I believe, next time. Yeah, look. What do I do here? I don't know. At some point I make a hard... Yeah, see, I hard double here. And then I was safe for most calcs here, because I was running a lot of bulk. I was running 252 HP, actually, I believe. Yeah, I was running 252 HP, 252 attack, adamant. So I take that fairly well. Maybe it was like a roll, I don't know. No life orb? Maybe life orb, I don't know. Yeah, and this game's over at this point, right? We're in the same situation as last time. Lotusumer isn't burned, it's just like dead, and Typhlosion's like pretty healthy, but I mean, I have an army still, so. Yeah, yeah, so Hydreigon was just so good, and yeah. That's pretty much all I've got to say. I thought most of my team was pretty under-tiered or to the top of the tier that they were in, except Slowbro. I think Slowbro is pretty middling in its tier, but if you can hit doubles, Slowbro is like really effective. Yeah. I hope this was helpful if you're thinking about picking any of these mons. And then next season, I would totally recommend picking Arcanine or Muck or Sandy Shocks or Hydreigon at the tiers they're sitting at. Hariyama's also probably fine, and Scyther is still in tier 4, I believe, so Scyther's fine. I would be iffy on Decidueye, but if you need Decidueye, go for it. Yeah. Yeah, so this was my champ team. This is the Hall of Fame. It was my 5th season in this league. It felt good to finally win with a team that I was proud of making. Gave me a lot of creativity in match. I think the true strength of this team was how many options I had going into my every matchup in my team building. So like I could spend, I felt like if I was going to spend a half-hour team building, like those every minute was very well spent. I had a lot of decisions to make, a lot of impactful decisions to make, and I think I made a lot of good ones, and it made it really hard for my opponents who had 7 Mon teams to play the game. So, yeah. After a not very good regular season, I managed to pull through in playoffs, and it was cool, and it was thanks to my very cool team. And yes, thank you for watching. Good night.